Very good evening, dear friends. I am now present to share the autobiography of Shehnai Maestro Ustad Bismillah Khan Sahab. So, dear friends, be present with me, the one and only Shehnai Maestro Ustad Bismillah Khan. The Shehnai of Ustad Bismillah Khan is never a casual experience. Side by side, I love to present few audio clips played by Shehnai Maestro Ustad Bismillah Khan Sahab. This is Rag Maru Behag. The Shehnai of Ustad Bismillah Khan is never a casual experience, nor is it an instrument of mild arousal. From the maestro's opening whisper into the complex flute, from the very first note of Sharaj that breaks into the atmosphere, he commands the listener's captive attention. First, his music seems to cascade over your senses, the crystal clarity of every note washing away your audience vanity. As all your resistance melts down to blissful surrender, you are cleanshed and made sacred to receive his music. And then, before you know it, you become the Shehnai on the lips of reality. And the music of the moment becomes the very breath of your life. Yet again, words may have just proved inadequate in describing the music of Ustad Bismillah Khan. But if it has aroused enough yearning to know how Khan Sahab himself was sculpted by the power of his divine music, we need to go back towards the beginning of the last century, 21st March 1916. It was an enchanted morning of spring in the small princely state of Dumrao in Bihar. State musicians Shehnai Nawaz, Rasul Baks Khan and his worthy son Paigambar Baks were getting ready to leave for their morning ritual of playing Shehnai at the Bihari temple in the royal palace. They probably had Basant Bahar on their minds when the cry of Pancham from a newborn voice rang in their ears. Paigambar Baks's wife, Mithan Begum, had just delivered a baby. The happy news brought a spontaneous Bismillah to the auspicious lips of the devout grandfather. Now next, Rag Tilak Kamud. They probably had Basant Bahar on their minds. The history of the musical family in which Bismillah Khan was born in, with the evolution of the Shehnai itself, and as if that was not enough, his maternal ancestry too was dedicated to the melodious notes of the Shehnai. And as for the environmental influence, the grand stage was already set in Kashi, Banaras, the eastern world's cradle of wisdom, art, and music since the Vedic times. At age 3, Bismillah's mother took him along to his maternal uncle's place at Banaras. The occasion was that of celebrating Eid. But once young Bismillah set foot in that three-storied house, its air and ambience seemed to embrace him with far-reaching effects. There was his elder maternal uncle, Vilayat Hussain, practicing his Shehnai in one room, and his younger maternal uncle, Ali Baks, playing his Shehnai in another corner. And the little boy began to nod rhythmically to the tunes, as if in acceptance of the warm invitation to be part of that lineage. Ali Baks even predicted to his sister that her little boy would definitely become a great Shehnai Nawaz one day. Young Bismillah remained at his uncle's place and began to shook in the music all around, as he grew up to be a quite lovable boy. He did not have much time for games or studies, as his heart was tuned to the music of the ether. The eternal city of Banaras cast a veil of magic of all around his vision. Light with the kaleidoscopic wonders of adolescence. Ali Bak's professional duties began with playing devotion-choked Shehnai every morning at the Vishnu temple of Varanasi, then having welcomed the rising sun with the notes of a morning raga. He would walk up to the famous Balaji temple. There, ens- there ensconced in a room and reserved for him, all Ali Baks would pour his heart out in a long and arduous practice of Shehnai. And all through this unbroken period of sadhana, that is riyaz, young Bismillah would sit watching him and motionless and breathless in anticipation. When would his Chote Mamu accept him, his Shagird, Shishya, that is disciple? The day was preordained, so it had to come. At first, it was just half an hour of talim every morning. Then gradually it got extended as little Bismillah realized that it was not easy to emulate the fluent melodious that poured out of his Mamu Shehnai so effortlessly. Shehnai was a difficult instrument, and his Ustad was a hard task master. A strict and regimented routine of riyaz dispelled all the surface romanticism and awakened young Bismillah to the enormity of the task he had undertaken. He had to endure mocking smiles from other youngsters at home when his instrument produced all kinds of weird sounds under pressure. Only his guru's reassurance and his own sense of destiny kept him going through those initial months of desperate toil. One fine day, the young disciple sought permission from his guru to practice at the special room in the Balaji temple. Hesitant at first, Ali Baks agreed to grant him the privilege. After his Sandhya Arti, and the evening Shehnai recital at the Jaravan temple. On an auspicious day, he personally escorted his nephew to his spiritual den at the Balaji temple and got him initiated into the vibrations of that seat of sadhana. A significant stage of Bismillah's grooming began there as he got used to bolting the door from inside and practicing for 4 to 5 hours every day, exiled from the rest of the world, not too far outside the wavelets on the Ganges, danced in melodic appreciation of his ascetic mode of sadhana, Riyaz. Almost a year passed in this manner, and Bismillah began to notice a qualitative difference in his music. He gained unprecedented facility with his instrument and began to enjoy the ragas he chose to explore, and he would get totally absorbed in his own music. He told his Mamu about the strange elation he felt during his evening riyaz, and his Mamu cautioned him not to speak about such things to anyone. As the summer months approached, young Bismillah went for a visit to his grandfather's place at Dumrao. There, with pride and anticipation, the young star displayed his newly acquired craft to his elders. His grandfather was not impressed with Bismillah's mellow style of playing. "You belong to a great lineage of Shehnai players," said his grandfather. "Learn to roar like a lion." The old man took his grandson's Shehnai and showed him exactly what he meant. Bismillah was stunned by the power and volume unleashed from his own familiar instrument. The rest of his stay at Dumrao was filled with vigorous exercise, long distance running, and a special diet of milk and badam. Within a week, he noticed a new vigor and richness in the tonal quality of his Shehnai, as his breath improved in strides. Back in Banaras, Bismillah's talim and riyaz went on a roll. He grew introspective and tried to integrate the qualities of three great Shehnai masters in himself. The intricate technique of Laikari and Tan of his older uncle. Now, this is Kajri, played by Ustad Bismillah Khan Sahab. Back in Banaras, Bismillah's talim and riyaz went on a roll. He grew introspective and tried to integrate the qualities of three great Shehnai masters in himself. The intricate technique of Laikari and Tan of his older uncle, the clear, robust stamina of his grandfather, and of course, the delicate, mellifluous wizardry and the Chote Mamu and his Chote Mamu, Vijay Chote Mamu, Vijayari the Chote Mamu, his formal Ustad. It was like a Sangam, a confluence of styles. But was it the right thing to do? Or should he move along the simple path shown by his Ustad alone. As he was delving deeper into this question into a meditative trance, he suddenly felt the light of open space within that closed room of the Balaji temple. His eyes rested on a pair of feet, pink and lotus like, and traversed upwards to take in the transformed form of a tall, handsome yogi standing before him with a staff and kamandal in his hands. Smiling, the holy man asked him to play on, but young Bismillah was too stunned to respond. His arms, his instruments were not in his control anymore. The yogi broke into a hearty laugh and made a benediction in his booming voice. "You will create bliss," he said, and vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. Unbolting the door, Bismillah ran out into the open, but there was no trace of that tall saffron clad figure. His own utter remorse at not being able to play the Shehnai for the holy visitor was compounded by the hard slap he received from Alibaks as he narrated the incident. Such secrets were not meant to be shared with anyone, not even his guru. What if such miracles never happened? Again, the Ustad had every right to be upset with his adolescent Shagird, especially when he had anticipated such a thing and had advised him to be discreet. More such miracles must have happened to Bismillah Khan later in life, but with his wood retinence, no details are available to the world. The effects of it could be seen in his music, though. His Shehnai was beginning to acquire the required impact, the asar, as if unseen horizons were fading in before him. The early flush of youth had its impact on his impressionable innocence. And those were the days of the magic of bioscope and screen, like Madhuri and Shulochana quickened his breath. He took great pains to collect the gate money from multiple sources and jostled with ordinary mortals to capture his seat in theatres. Real life for him, however, was bathed in the purity of music. The passions and sentiments thereof were meaningful only to the extent of aiding him in his musical maturity. Without their knowledge, the famous of Banaras, mainly the great exponents of classical music, enriched Bismillah Khan's musical repertoire and sensibility. On his way back from the Balaji temple, many hours were spent in intoxicated listening at the narrow winding lane of Dalmandi, where the professional singing women lived in close proximity and rivalry of one another. If there were the strains of a Chota Khayal wafting out of the kotha of Rasulan Bai, there was the legendary Vidyarthi singing a poignant bihag in the next house, unveiling the mystery of the raga in her little rendition. So this was the small audio clips played by Ustad Bismillah Khan Sahab, unveiling the mystery of the raga in her lilting rendition and recycling against the staircase walls of these colorful abodes of dance and music. Young Bismillah would absorb the musical nuances, the bhav and the ras, and sublimate them in his mind. A few paces of brisk walk would envelop him with Rajeshwari's Dadra, enriched by the immaculate and that Sangat of the Sarangi Maestro Pandit Gopal Mishra, followed by the allure of Motibai's Thumri, accompanied by the tabla maestros Pandit Anokhe Lal's tabla. Bismillah's enthralled walk would culminate at the canopy of Thumri legend Siddheshwari Devi, and Siddheshwari Devi's residence, unless, of course, his dear older brother Shamsuddin intercepted him and nudged him homewards, whispering a short lecture on the pitfalls of early youth. Reaching home with an embarrassed smile, Bismillah would have to give him ample proof of his perfectly honorable intentions by reproducing each and every exquisite and priceless bandish he had picked up literally by the wayside. On fateful day in the year 1930, when his Ustad was getting ready to leave for the famous Allahabad Music Conference, a tearful 14-year-old Bismillah pleaded with him to be taken along. Ali Bux couldn't deny providence for too long. When the organizer's car rolled in to fetch him, he gave his nephew the nod. A similar nod on the performing stage that evening brought on that historic moment when, for the very first time, Bismillah Khan's Shehnai was exposed to a live audience. After a moody alap in Rag Kedar, Ali Bux improvised on a rare bandish. As he nodded to his young Shagird, Bismillah reproduced it flawlessly with an added dimension that was rare for any young musicians. Aftafe Maushiki, the radiant son of music Ustad Fayaz Khan, was in the audience seated with other eminent stalwarts of that time. His spontaneous wah wah filled the air after the performance. While congratulating Ali Bux backstage, he advised him to protectively nurture the young Shagid whose Shehnai already showed the qualities of verbal articulation. Then, turning to young Bismillah, he showered him with some precious words of encouragement. Fayaz Khan's blessings and the first glimpse of the real world of celebrated performers inspired Bismillah to invest a lot more depth and experience and expense in his musical maturity. Layer upon layer, he imbibed the essence of the best of music that appealed to his own flowering sensibility. It was an era of great musicians who lived and breathed divine music. Ustad Abdul Karim Khan's sonorous voice, with its spiritual appeal, was beautifully simulated by Bismillah's Shehnai. Young Bismillah was also deeply influenced by Ustad Fayyaz Khan's powerful voice of rendition. His Pukar, his Mir, Omkarnath Thakur's Deshi Tori, Hafiz Ali Khan's majestic Darbari, Anayat Khan and his magical Rag Jai Jayanti. Before he could cross 16, Bismillah was coaxed into marriage. The elders of the traditional joint family choose his elder Mamu's daughter as a ready match for young Bismillah. A natural stream of relatively unattached family life began to flow parallel to his devoted pursuit of music. So consumed was he by the magic of music that even on the second night following his nikah, faint strains of a Begum Akhtar ghazal in Rag Jogia Bhairavi and wafting in from a distant gramophone held more appeal for him than the immediate charm of his bejeweled bride. Blessed with 9 children, Bismillah Khan's conjugal life ran its ardent course for half a century. But as he himself would put it, that's another story. By the time he was 21, Bismillah had already won a few gold medals in All India music conferences. But his heralded arrival and growth in the higher spheres of classical music began on April 16, 1938, with his performance at the historic launch of All India Radio Lucknow. The radio opened up a new highway for his musical journey. After the sudden death of his Ustad Ali Baks in the year 1940, Bismillah wept for days, sometimes through his Shehnai, sometimes openly like a child. It took him months to reintegrate himself and convert that grief and bereavement into steely resolve to do his Ustad proud. With ascetic concentration, he caressed, he caressed his Shehnai, and the collective signs of the great Shehnai exponents over the years seemed to over around his ears. From its tribal and the folk origins, the Shehnai had managed to reach the temple premises, but the society at large still did not accord it the status it deserved. It was still relegated to the uh, that class of aristocracy. The instrument longed for dignity and status, and Bismillah Khan was determined to free it from the stifling image it had to endure so far. At his favorite temple and mosque, he prayed for its liberation and simultaneously he concentrated on investing the instrument with qualities and possibilities hetero unexplored. He assimilated some special qualities of stringed instruments, strove to include the jor and the jhala in his range, all the crafty nuances and the subtle artistry which were not deemed possible in Shehnai before, were lovingly and adroitly woven into his playing technique. The versatility of the grand old Ustad Alauddin Khan inspired his daily riyaz. His treatment of the ragas before a reference to the Laikari, Tihai, and Pukar of Ustad Fayyaz Khan, who had one praised his his Kahan, his Kahan when he was just a lad of 14. Bismillah Khan's that microtonal accuracy began to dance with nimble feet and great flourish along the entire spectrum of his improvisation. All the bhav and ras, the emotions and the passions of the that he had been stumped of the adolescent heart now found a sublime expression in his music. His expanding repertoire now had the feel of purity and perfection. It had integrated his religious fervor, his personal spirituality, and his pure and unwavering love for his ancestral Shehnai. He had finally arrived in the classical music scene of India, holding aloft his instrument with an air of triumph and dignity. The Shehnai Nawaz and his Shehnai both had claimed their long deserved, deserved that position on the that both had claimed their long deserved position on the grand arena of classical music. The symbolic culmination of it all was witnessed at the dawn of India's independence. Khan Sahab Bismillah Khan became the first free Indian to greet the entire nation through the auspicious notes of his Shehnai from the ramparts of the historic Red Fort. A galaxy of prominent Indians, including the architects of India's freedom struggle and her destiny, was poised in rapt attention, listening to the moving music of a future Bharat Ratna. As his family grew, Bismillah Khan strove to keep pace with with his fame and hectic concert schedules. As all major awards and honors kept coming his way, Bismillah was once again brevetted on the personal front. His intimate friend and elder brother Shamshuddin's Shehnai fell silent forever. His childhood spates of seculation and detachment that seemed to return, and claiming most of his precious free moments, the enchanted world never learned to allow him enough that serenity and solution of that seclusion of even to his day. The venerable that Banaras Hindu University and honored the school dropout with a decorate of with a decorative way of musical honor, with a doctorate of letters for his mastery on music. The Conqueror King Zahir Shah of Afghanistan showered the simple fakir with precious jewels and Persian carpets. The glamour world of films too spread the red carpet for the humble wizard as his Shehnai was invited to resonate. Throughout the popular film Gunj Uthi Shehnai, introducing the movie-going multitudes to the classical magic of the long neglected instrument, the innocent, childlike quality that one may always detect in the twinkling eyes and the open smile of the aging Ustad till today has its secret grounded in his true affection for man and God. He has no use for the hollow trappings of lifestyle, glamour, or fame. He loves his Banaras, his Shivalay, his Masjid, the ghats of the Ganges. No lure of the outer world can fan any other desire in him. When he had to go for the prestigious Edinburgh Festival and the Commonwealth Arts Festival in the year 1965, he traded his acute fear of flying with the assurance of a pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina. Every year on the eighth day of Muharram, the devout Shiva and Muslim leads a procession common citizens through the narrow serpentine lanes of Banaras, blowing into a special silver Shehnai, sending clear signals to the most orthodox mullahs and maulvis that music is not taboo but an integral and intimate part of life and expression. He leads the group without a pause until it reaches the Rawza of the martyr Imam Hussein, sitting cross legged like a forlorn fakir on the dusty ground. His rare minster His rare minstrel then plays his Shehnai for hours while his tears flow like the Ganges in divine commemoration. A logical extension of his honest and guileless behavior can be seen in his own one to one interaction with his audience. When he was invited at the first Indian ever to perform at the Lincoln Center Hall in America, the effect of his electrifying performance was so intense on the huge audience that he had to take as many as seven certain calls. And at the end of it, when there was an overwhelming demand for a few spoken words for the instrumentalist, his candid confession over the microphone was that wise men did not speak much, and besides, after such an exhausting performance, he was thirsting for a cup of tea. The entire audience greeted the warm human side of the gifted musician once again with resounding applause. Over his long and rewarding musical odyssey, Khan Saab has heartily praised and inspired other talents around him. No one has ever felt intimidated or slighted by his lofty stature. He has lovingly engaged himself in duets or jugalbandis with artists junior to him. The masterly sitar Ustad Bilayat Khan and Ustad Halim Zafar Khan, the enticing vocals of Girija Devi, the eloquent violin of N. Rajan and Pandit Vishnu Gobind Jog, Viji Jog, have all enjoyed their fleeting relationship with frolicking notes of Shehnai from the jovial Maestro. No one can get a true measure of the enormous reaches of Indian classical music without listening to the Shehnai of Ustad Bismillah Khan. As an extent, as an extension of his voice, his persona, his spirituality, his very soul, Khan Sahab can wield his instrument like a magic wand. His music can simultaneously bring tears to the eyes while it can choke the heart with untold ecstasy. In heartening an ordinary instrument with a limited range, Bismillah Khan has taken his Shehnai along with him to great heights of the audience adoration by infusing in the entire range of possibilities of classical music. The impact of his style has been so great that he does not need to impress the audience with complicated ragas or creative notes that as he advised by his beloved Mamu Ustad Ali Waqs. He plays simple and known ragas like Rag, Bageshwari, Behag, Khamaj, Malkos, Kedar with honesty and sincerity, appealing more to the heart than the mind. And the power it wields over his audiences have been demonstrated in the innumerable performances all over the world. In the contemporary world of music, where most stalwarts at the pinnacle of their career lead a jet set, glamorous life, Ustad Bismillah Khan stands apart with his simple, austere, and ascetic lifestyle, with his hermit like detachment and sublime musical contentment. He appears to be among the richest of them all today, with a number of diverse financial responsibilities on his shoulders. It would be understandable if he prayed to his God for worldly riches. But as it had happened with a distressed Swami Vivekanand in front of the idol of goddess Kali, Khan Sahab too will ask his Khuda for nothing more than just that one thing he has always asked for. May the Almighty continue to bless him with music that is true and blissful. To the ascetic Bismillah Khan, there is nothing else worth asking for from the Emperor of the universe. When future generations of men and women will visit the eternal city of Benares and be intrigued by some seemingly eternal strains of Shehnai floating around the ghats of the Ganga and meandering lanes around the Kashi Vishwanath temple. Some old local sadhu with matted hair and ash smeared body might whisper to them that actually there is no one playing that music. It is the moving spirit of the city that becomes a void from time to time. And if his listeners looked incredulous, he might just conjure a glimpse into the legend of Shehnai Nawaz Ustad Bismillah Khan. With a mysterious glint in his eye, he would explain that Baba Vishwanath was so happy and suffused with the daily offerings of Shehnai made to him that he wanted the entire world to listen to that eternal music, and a devout Muslim who saw the presence of God in all human beings was blessed to fulfill that divine wish. Perhaps his informed audience would once again look around eagerly to spot the source of that unreal music. The twinkling wavelets of the flowing Ganges would be all that would meet their eyes. So, dear music lover friends, this was the brief autobiography which I presented among all of you. Thank you. Very good night. Very good night. Very good night. See you again with other autobiographies of Indian classical musicians.